Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Brittany Colville. I'm the coordinator for the Task Team 2 High-Level Political Forum for the ICOMOS SDGs Sustainable Development Goals Working Group. We're here today to have a ResiliArt debate in the lead up to the Mondiacult event. I would like to ask Gabriel Caballero to present this event, introduce this event. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming in. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be here in this SDGs working group and ICOMOS Mexico, ResiliArt, and Mondiacult debates. I would like to introduce the ICOMOS Sustainable Development Goals working group. It is a working group that was established as an interdisciplinary task force by the Scientific Council of ICOMOS during the 18th General Assembly in 2014. And the SDGs working group coordinates the ICOMOS's response to the Agenda 2030 through advocacy, policy, and localizing of the SDGs. The working group acts as a platform for recognition and mainstreaming the effective contribution of cultural heritage as a driver and enabler of sustainable development in the process of the implementation of the UN SDGs. The working group currently has 9 priority actions or task teams looking at various aspects of heritage and the SDGs, creating policies, promoting culture as a pillar of sustainability, localizing discussions of heritage and the SDGs, world heritage and sustainable development, partnerships for sustainable urban development, developing relevant indicators, funding and resources, gender equality, and communications. If you could go to the next slide, please, Brittany.
Sorry, there you go.
For the last few months, the SDGs working group has been very busy engaging UNESCO member states at the regional consultations for Mondiacult 2022, the World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development. We believe that this meeting is an important one for us as it serves as the foundation of new policies for UNESCO and the cultural sector on policies that are strongly anchored to sustainable development. ICOMOS was privileged enough to be able to present in all the regional consultations that started from Europe and North America, Asia Pacific, African region, Latin America and Caribbean, and the Arab states. We've also gathered the perspectives of our ICOMOS regions and their priorities for cultural heritage policies. Next slide, please, Brittany. We're here today because we see the challenges that we face right now are great. COVID-19 has affected the capacity of many sites in the heritage sector and many tourist sites as well. And mobilizing on sites is not easy and priorities are changing. Heritage sites have been in a lockdown and many cultural workers are economically struggling because of the global disruption. And climate change is here and it affects many heritage sites as well. We are here to ask fundamental questions so that we can incorporate the ideas we gather here to further strengthen the perspectives of ICOMOS for the cultural policies for sustainable development in the future. I wish everyone a wonderful debate moving forward. Thank you, Brittany. Over to you.
Thank you, Gabriel. I'll be acting as a co-moderator today, along with Yola Luca from ICOMOS Mexico. I would like to ask Yola to join us and introduce our first panelist, Olga Bellinger.
Thank you, Brittany. Buenos días, mi nombre es Yola Lucio Frizaga, soy miembro de ICOMOS Mexicano y focal point del grupo de trabajo de profesionales emergentes de ICOMOS. A continuación les presentaré a la maestra Olga Bellinger. Ella es expresidenta de ICOMOS México. Olga se graduó como arquitecta en 1971 en la Escuela Nacional de Arquitectura de la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. Cuenta con maestría en Conservación y Restauración de Monumentos y Sitios, beca UNESCO, por la Universidad de La Sapienza Roma, ICROM Italia, y completó el curso en Vivienda, Construcción y Planificación de Interés Social con una beca ONU en Francia y Benelux. Laboró en el Instituto Nacional de Antropología e Historia en trabajos de catalogación, delimitación, documentación y reglamentación para 22 zonas federales de monumentos históricos. En el Instituto del Fondo Nacional para la Vivienda de los Trabajadores laboró en orientación y promoción social y promovió la rehabilitación de vivienda en centros históricos. Ella es profesora, conferencista y miembro activo de ICOMOS México desde 1971. Ahí ha sido vicepresidente en 2003 a 2009, presidente del Comité Nacional 2009 a 2015 y miembro del Comité Ejecutivo Internacional 2010 a 2017. Bienvenida, Olga.
Muchas gracias. Gracias a todos. Gracias a Gabriel Caballero, a Brittany, a todos por esta invitación tan extraordinaria. Estoy encantada de estar aquí con ustedes y vamos a empezar contestando la primera pregunta. ¿Qué políticas de apoyo han surgido para los trabajos tradicionales durante COVID? Un área de gran importancia para la sobrevivencia del ecosistema de la Cuenca de México es el paisaje cultural y zona económica productiva chinampera de la subcuenca Xochimilco-Chalco, al sur de la zona metropolitana de la Ciudad de México. Could we start seeing the slides, please?
We're just going to introduce each of the panelists. Thank you, Olga.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So our next panelist today is Dr. Guven Eken. Sorry, he's the advisor to the mayor at Izmir Metropolitan Municipality in Turkey. Guven graduated from Ege University, the Faculty of Medicine in 1990. She started at Middle East Technical University. In the same years, he worked at the Ecological Networks Coordinator as the Ecological Networks Coordinator at the World's Bird Protection Agency. He served as the General Manager and the President of Doge Foundation between 2004 and 2014. Due to his work on nature, he was selected as one of Turkey's change makers in May of 2011. Ekkin also developed the methodology of global scientific standards for selection of protected areas, the key biodiversity areas concept, which was published in Bioscience. He has also undertaken the first national application of the key biodiversity areas concept in Turkey. Dr. Guven Eken works as the consular to the mayor at Izmir Metropolitan Municipality and serves as the chairman of the board of directors at IZDOGA. Guven, would you like to say anything quickly?
Hello, I think he's having a little bit of trouble connecting because of the
okay,
internet connection, but he'll be, I think, reconnected shortly.
Okay, we'll move on and come back to Dr. Eken. Our next speaker is Priyanka Panwani. She's a conservation and design consultant, coordinator of ICOMOS Mexico, ICOMOS India National Scientific Committee on Risk Preparedness. Priyanka is one of the emerging professionals for India with 10 years experience in architecture and regeneration projects. She's an alumni of Sir J.J. College of Architecture in Mumbai and has studied conservation of historic buildings at the University of Bath in the United Kingdom. She has been professionally involved as a heritage consultant and a visiting academic with esteemed institutions in the city. Priyanka volunteers as a coordinator of the ICOMOS India National Scientific Committee on Risk Preparedness. She is also a member of Climate Change Heritage Network Youth Forum and is part of the C40 Women for Climate Mumbai cohort. Her research interests include resilience of historic buildings and conservation of industrial heritage. Priyanka, did you want to say anything?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brittany, and good evening, everyone from Mumbai. I am very honored to be invited to this esteemed panel, and I'm looking forward to share my observations from the standpoint of an emerging professional, my experiences during the pandemic, and as an advocate for heritage and climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Our fourth panelist today is Kai Weiss. He's an independent planner and architect and is formerly a president of ICOMOS Mexico. Kai Weiss was a past president of ICOMOS Nepal. Sorry, president of ICOMOS Nepal, not ICOMOS Mexico. He completed his master's in architecture from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich in 1992 and is presently a doctoral researcher in the Department of Archaeology at Durham University. His research is on post-disaster rehabilitation of urban heritage and relationships between communities. Kai has been working as a planner and architect in the Himalayan region and has facilitated the establishment of management systems for World Heritage Nepal, Uzbekistan, India, and Myanmar. Kai was responsible for coordinating culture sector response after the 2015 Gorkha earthquake in Nepal and the 2016 Chuak earthquake in Myanmar. Kai, would you like to say anything?
Greetings from Kathmandu. It's great to be here and be discussing climate change and the pandemic in connection with cultural heritage. I think these are really issues that have impacted us in Nepal and along the Himalayas, especially. Also climate change has been an issue for the past decades. I think we started discussing this long time back. So it's good that now the global community is also getting involved in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. And Yola, would you like to present our last panelist?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Brittany. Bien, tengo el gusto de presentarles a la doctora Nelly Robles García, coordinadora del Comité Científico Nacional de Patrimonio Arqueológico de ICOMOS México. Nelly es arqueóloga y doctora en antropología y manejo de recursos culturales. Se desempeña como investigadora en el INA Oaxaca y es miembro del Sistema Nacional de Investigadores de México nivel 1. Ha dirigido proyectos arqueológicos y de conservación, entre los que están el Proyecto Mitla, Proyecto Yagul, el Plan de Manejo de Monte Albán, así como los proyectos para la restauración de los daños por los sismos en Monte Albán, Dainzú, Lambitieco, Yagul y Mitla. Actualmente es directora del proyecto del Conjunto Monumental de Atzompa, autora de libros sobre Oaxaca, arqueología y conservación arqueológica. Su principal actividad es la obra de restauración de arquitectura prehispánica. Miembro de ICOMOS desde 1996, fue ganadora del Premio Federico Sescose del ICOMOS Mexicano en 2020 y del Premio Francisco de la Maza del INA en 2021 por sus trabajos en los temas de su especialidad. Bienvenida, doctora. No sé si gusta tomar la palabra y dirigirnos algún mensaje.
Buenos días desde Oaxaca, México a todos. Me da mucho gusto compartir este programa con ustedes y agradecida con los organizadores de tener la oportunidad de expresar algunas de las ideas sobre estos tópicos tan importantes en los que se encuentra incluido el patrimonio cultural y que pues desafortunadamente no en todo el mundo hay respuestas favorables en cuanto a COVID, en cuanto a pues a la resiliencia de los sitios patrimoniales. Pero creo que estos debates, estos encuentros nos sirven para poner en perspectiva las diferentes respuestas en las regiones del mundo. Muchas gracias y bienvenidos a todos.
Muchas gracias, doctora.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Finally, I would just like to quickly introduce Lydia Lupesco, who will be monitoring our Facebook feed, and Raul Cantor, who will be monitoring the chat here on Zoom to put together any questions from the audience for later discussion. Lydia is with US ICOMOS and has a Master's of Arts in Heritage Management, and Raul is a member of ICOMOS Mexico, is Master of Histories and PhD in History. Thank you for their support today. So our first question today is, what supportive policies have emerged from traditional workings during COVID? Yola?
La primera pregunta para nuestra sesión es, ¿qué políticas de apoyo han surgido para los trabajos tradicionales durante el COVID? Y Quisiera invitar a la doctora Olga a responder, perdón, a la maestra Olga a responder a ser la primera en responder esta pregunta, por favor.
Con mucho gusto, Lucio. Sí, veamos, estas políticas, hay un área de gran importancia para la sobrevivencia del ecosistema de la Cuenca de México, es el paisaje cultural y zona económico-productiva chinampera de la subcuenca Xochimilco-Chalco, al sur de la zona metropolitana de la Ciudad de México. Con la finalidad de su estudio, restauración y conservación, se creó desde diciembre del 2012 la Autoridad de la Zona Patrimonio Mundial Natural y Cultural de Xochimilco, Tláhuac y Milpalta, que actualmente sus atribuciones y facultades se han disminuido. Dicha autoridad gestionó el apoyo de diversas instituciones académicas, asociaciones y de grupos diversos de la sociedad civil, entre los que destacan la UAM Xochimilco, la UNAM, el ICOMOS México y colectivos interesados en la conservación y restauración del patrimonio cultural y natural, para realizar estudios de conservación, de desarrollo comunitario, económico, productivo, socioculturales y del medio ambiente. Recientemente, por su importancia en los ámbitos medioambiental, económico, productivo y sociocultural, la autoridad promovió y logró la denominación de Sistema Importante del Patrimonio Agrícola Mundial, conocido como SIPAM, reconocido por la Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Alimentación y la Agricultura, FAO, en abril de 2018, como Sistema Agrícola Chinampero de la Ciudad de México. Cabe destacar que este bien de valor universal excepcional es considerado uno de los agrosistemas de mayor productividad agrícola a nivel mundial. En este sentido, el Estado mexicano, apoyado en sus instancias estatales y locales, está comprometido en apoyar el diseño y ejecución de un plan de manejo para la conservación y restauración del bien. Se trata de un paisaje arqueológico que comprende alrededor de 3.500 chinampas activas y otras 17.000 potenciales, ubicadas en 5 poblados. I'll end it there.
Yes, thank you, Olga.
Muchas gracias.
Dr. Eken, would you like to present next?
Hello. First of all, I would like to apologize that our connection was interrupted. What I would like to say hello from the Mediterranean, from the city of Izmir. For those who doesn't know, we are one of the largest cities in the Eastern Mediterranean in Turkey, Izmir, and we are a Mediterranean area, city, province, where a lot of traditional knowledge is still living in our countryside, within the city, in our villages. So our municipality, the Metropolitan Municipality, pays great attention to save the indigenous cultures, the ancient knowledge in our province and in the wider Mediterranean to design our future. We give a lot of great value. So during the pandemic and widely as part of our policy, we have a very well established supporting system to rural communities which maintain their traditional production. I will give some more details in the later parts of this great panel. But our support to our rural communities, which maintain their land, their culture, close to their traditional states, comprises financial support, like we buy their milk to double prices if they maintain the traditional production scheme, or cultural or economical, or in different ways. Our municipality supports the local communities, but our support is not only a support for them, but also for us. We establish a number of research institutions to understand much better what they do, and perhaps more importantly, why they do things differently. So this is the starting points which I would like to make. I think other questions which are coming up will be more suitable to give you in-depth information about what we do in Izmir. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Eken. Our next presenter will be Priyanka. Once again, the question is, what supportive policies have emerged for traditional works during COVID?
Thank you, Brittany. So in India and everywhere, COVID-19 was an unexpected emergency that hit heritage sectors severely. The first wave of the pandemic forced people to stay indoor due to the imposed social and economic lockdowns, and cities saw reverse migration by workers and laborers in India. Due to lockdowns, cultural places such as monuments and museums were closed for visitors, and such restrictions hit tourism and economies connected with them. Traditional workers such as craftspeople are dependent on daily production and sales, and COVID made their lives come to a standstill due to stoppage of raw material and unsold inventories, eventually leading to lack of money to feed families. So coming to the question of supportive policies, there are several organizations in India like Dastkar which work with traditional artisans to help them to adapt to the new normal through imaginative solutions, digital technologies, and new channels of communication. Government, craft organizations, designers, artisan families came together through technologies to collaborate and discuss on the future prospects. The Prime Minister, in his letter to the nation in May 2020, asserted on a path of self-reliant India through Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign and detailed several provisions for artisans and indigenous peoples. They include monthly pension for old artisans, facilities for fishermen to strengthen the blue economy, financial assistance for self-help groups, etc. The Ministry of Culture in India has a list of schemes and fellowships on its website to support the traditional workers. This month, the Union Budget of India was released, and it promises to take issues of sustainability and climate change seriously. And budgetary allocation for Cultural Ministry has also increased, indicating the government's focus on development and heritage. So we see that there are a lot of supportive policies, and we are yet to see more implementation on ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Once again, Kai, would you like to present now on what supportive policies have emerged for traditional works during COVID?
Thank you. So I'm going to present in respect to our situation in Nepal, but of course, a lot of it is similar throughout the world. I think in connection with supportive policies, especially for like traditional works or actually anything related to cultural heritage, I think it was too high an expectation that anything would be done immediately. But on the one hand, we had a major earthquake in 2015, and the rehabilitation works have continued throughout the COVID period. We had, of course, a bit of issues with importing things, but most of these activities are linked to local materials, local people being involved, which made it possible even during the COVID period to continue with this work. On the other hand, again, in connection with policies, that is the involvement of government, I would say that a lot of these things are dependent on community resilience and not the government being involved, which again, we saw. The interesting thing about COVID was that people had to slow down, had time to think, they became more mindful of their environment. And I think they became aware of their heritage as well. They had time to really, contemplate. and there was this improved sort of interest in the local, in the cultural heritage of the communities. And of course, looking at the impact of the COVID, the greatest impact was on mobility, I would say, and which of course impacted tourism and the big industry. But on the other hand, for sort of more the local community activities, it had less impact. And tourism, which I think I'll be explaining later on, was more local tourism. So we really sort of slowed down and looked at what was localized, what was sort of one's own identity, one's own community, and what was possible for one to achieve within the local context. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Bueno, finalmente quisiéramos invitar a la doctora Nelly Robles a responder la pregunta 1.
Y muchas gracias. Pues como en todo el mundo, la crisis del COVID en México obviamente no es un tema que esté superado. Estamos viviendo dentro de este tremendo problema. Y bueno, para referirnos a las políticas de apoyo, pues lo que yo puedo decir es que desafortunadamente el gobierno mexicano no ha enfocado esfuerzos para establecer políticas que claramente apoyen trabajos tradicionales para el caso. Cada comunidad en México, cada familia ha tenido que lidiar con esta problemática. A partir de la llegada del actual gobierno en 2018, se estableció una especie de bono económico para las familias pobres. A esto le han llamado programas del bienestar, pero esto no es para incentivar trabajos tradicionales, sino más bien una especie de complemento para la canasta básica y con fines políticos claramente clientelares. La llegada del COVID no cambió el rumbo. En el caso de los proyectos institucionales de atención a la conservación del patrimonio construido, la pandemia fue la excusa perfecta para cancelar hasta el 75% de los presupuestos normales, propiciando con esto los despidos de una enorme cantidad de trabajadores, desde académicos, técnicos y trabajadores manuales. Por lo tanto, solo algunas excepciones urgentes, como el caso de proyectos de atención a daños por los sismos que nos golpearon en 2017 y 2018, ahí se continuaron las tareas y pudimos de alguna manera contratar a algunos trabajadores manuales. De tal manera que no tenemos una respuesta positiva en el tema de políticas públicas para apoyar los trabajos tradicionales durante el COVID. Lo que sí tenemos son las organizaciones comunitarias que se han preocupado por mantener, por un lado, las comunidades a salvo, sus pueblos cerrados, prohibida la entrada para todos los que no pertenecemos a esos pueblos, y en segundo lugar, hacer la producción de alimentos al interior de sus comunidades de manera cerrada. Muchas gracias, es lo que puedo decir.
Muchas gracias, doctora.
Thank you, Dr. Nelly. Our second question tonight is, can you please provide examples of how the culture and heritage sector will support the recovery of the post-pandemic economy? Dr. Ekan, would you like to present first?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, ideally, in the Mediterranean, we don't separate agriculture from culture, because the word agriculture itself covers heritage and culture. So what we came up as an idea is that we talk a lot about circular economy, circular city, but we felt that maybe a missing link in this area is there, which is a circular culture. So in the UCLG World Culture Summit took place in September last year in Izmir, and during the preparation of that summit, we felt that the missing concept is required to make our city circular, to make the economy circular, which is a circular culture, which is the basis of everything else. Because if we don't make our way of perception of life, way of living, way of thinking not compatible with the nature, with the environment itself, it is really hard to preserve anything, including the cultural heritage. So we identified 4 pillars which define the circular culture. One is our harmony with nature. The second is harmony with each other. The third is harmony with the past, which makes the culture linkage with the heritage, with the human heritage. And then the fourth is harmony with the change itself. So we have structured our city development program taking this circular culture concept into account. And this is very much also linked with the economy, which the examples, again, more concrete examples, the linkage between economy, culture and heritage. I will give more concrete examples under the forthcoming questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Eken. Our next presenter will be Priyanka. Again, the question is, can you provide examples of how the culture and heritage sector will provide support in the recovery of the post-pandemic economy?
Thank you, Brittany. Cultural and heritage help people connect with their past and identify with their places. It is deeply linked with well-being and mental health of human beings. During the crisis, we discovered our ability to reflect, but quickly lost it in the rush to get back to life as we knew it. Realizing and using heritage for emotional well-being can affect productivity and impact the economy positively, I think. The pandemic also made people realize the value of their existing assets and multi-use products. We heard a lot about people devising creative ways of adapting their residential spaces into workspaces. They're craving for clean air and open spaces. Also, with growing climate awareness, people understand the need for adaptive reuse of existing and heritage structures, which will enable them to create more functional spaces by spending less, and this will in turn strengthen the economy. Cultural and heritage places empowered themselves with digital literacy during the pandemic and are now quite able to produce virtual events, experiences, and even sales for online shopping. This will augment the revenue generated through offline collections and when these places are opened up for tourism. In Mumbai, virtual heritage walks conducted by historians and guides became popular during the pandemic, and virtual workshops by artisans continue to engage people. As people become conscious of the changing climate and the need to turn towards local and sustainable materials and crafts, there is a demand for unique products and experiences that traditional works can provide. In June 2021, I participated in ecotourism with indigenous peoples who conducted a forest walk within Mumbai called Breakfast in RA. Collaboration between NGOs and natives to conduct such events can definitely support local economies and create awareness for heritage and culture at the same time. Interior design and hotel industry too can partner with culture and heritage industry to fulfill demands and support the recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Kai, if you'd like to present next, again, the question is, can you provide examples of how the culture and heritage sector will support the recovery of the post-pandemic economy?
Thank you. I think the pandemic, as mentioned previously, sort of changed our whole understanding of how things move forward, how we live, how we see the environment, and things have sort of slowed down. I've spent the last 2 years more or less in Nepal with very few travels, while my life was very different before that. And that you can really see that also in the local economy, which has really become localized. And I think this whole link, we are online, we have connected throughout the world, but when it comes to the economy and again, mention of tourism, it's all become very localized. I mean, I used to drink Italian or European coffee. Now it's all Nepali coffee, for example. But again, everything is being really localized, and things have slowed down. And I think that again touches back on our local identity, local way of doing things, and it becomes very localized. And that touches again on the local cultural heritage. I think that is something that we need to contemplate on how we now move forward. It's not like we should not be trying to catch up on the 2 years that we've missed and you know, go wild on it. But actually, after contemplating, hopefully we can you know, look back and look at the small things, how we do it sort of in a localized manner. And I think that really has been the main outcome of these 2 years. Now, in connection with the impact on heritage itself, we had the earthquake, which had more impact on the tangible heritage, while we had the pandemic, which was again affected the intangible. But it's all linked to the resilience of the communities and how they respond. And I think by them being tested by the earthquake and the pandemic, something much, you know, they've become more resilient and people are much more involved and aware of their cultural heritage, which will impact the way we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai.
Bien, ahora le pedimos a la doctora Nelly Robles nos responda a la segunda pregunta, que es, ¿puede dar ejemplos de cómo el sector de cultura y patrimonio apoyará la recuperación de la economía post-pandemia?
Puedo decir que en México, desde antes de la pandemia, existen varios ejemplos de grupos de la sociedad civil organizados en torno a trabajos que se basan en recursos culturales y patrimoniales. Seguramente, ante el letargo del sector oficial, serán estos grupos quienes exijan políticas más incluyentes para que se flexibilice la exclusividad oficial en torno al patrimonio y se popularice la intervención de grupos de base en la apropiación o reapropiación de su propio patrimonio, para conservarlo y ponerlo en valor en beneficio de las economías locales. En el caso de los trabajos para la conservación de sitios patrimoniales, no hay proyecto que no aprecie la participación de comunidades para la realización de los trabajos. Un caso concreto ha sido la creación de la infraestructura en la zona arqueológica de Monte Albán y Atzompa, que es un sitio patrimonio de la humanidad. Aunque no ligado a la problemática COVID, en este sitio se logró desde el 2012 que toda la infraestructura de investigación y de uso público fuera hecha a base de arquitectura tradicional de tierra. De esta manera se logró interactuar con la comunidad en el intercambio de saberes y técnicas de arquitectura vernácula para beneficiar al sitio con infraestructura de bajo costo, a la que además se le agregó el componente de energías solares, reciclaje de agua y sanitarios ecológicos. Por otro lado, la riqueza artesanal de una región como Oaxaca representa todo un área de oportunidades para la revaloración del patrimonio tangible e intangible. Esto siempre y cuando se defienda de forma jurídica y comunitaria la autenticidad de tales obras de arte. De esta manera, una forma de apoyar a las comunidades sería incentivando la participación de las comunidades en la recuperación de técnicas tradicionales en beneficio del funcionamiento de los sitios patrimoniales.
Muchas gracias, doctora. A continuación, invito a la maestra Olga Oribe a responder la pregunta. Maestra Olga Oribe. Se encuentra silenciada.
Discúlpenme, por favor. I'm sorry. ICOMOS México propuso desde 2015 un proyecto de restauración y plan de rehabilitación integral del puente de Urrutia y su área de influencia en Xochimilco, que es un bien cultural y natural de relevancia en la zona. A partir de talleres de participación comunitaria para niños y adultos, se identificó que el puente de Urrutia, debido a sus valores y su significado histórico y cultural, es un sitio propicio para la comercialización y promoción de productos de la región, entre los que destacan hortalizas, flores y artesanías asociados a las actividades turísticas de la zona. Además, se promueve el potencial sociocultural como documento y escenario de la revolución agraria y de los intentos de despojo de tierras a chinamperos y ejidatarios, lo que denota su valor como constructor de identidad y memoria colectiva y como espacio público para la reintegración del tejido social. Por otra parte, el objetivo del Plan de Rehabilitación Integral de su área de influencia promueve su potencial económico, productivo, al estar ubicado sobre la vía principal de comunicación y transportación de insumos alimenticios desde la época prehispánica. Las chinampas ubicadas en Xochimilco y Tláhuac comprenden más de 2,000 hectáreas en las cuales trabajan cerca de 12,000 personas cultivando hortalizas y flores, especies agrícolas domesticadas y 131 especies de plantas ornamentales. Este sistema preserva los conocimientos y tecnologías agrícolas ancestrales, como las técnicas tradicionales de cultivo prehispánicos que se han transmitido de manera oral. En las chinampas aún se pueden encontrar los cultivos representativos de la milpa, maíz, frijol, calabaza, chile, quelites y el amaranto en su etapa de germinación. Estas son una fuente importante de alimentos para una de las ciudades más pobladas del planeta. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, maestra.
Thank you, Olga. Our next question is, what are the possible methods to integrate heritage, cultural landscapes and traditional knowledge into future climate change policy? I'd like to invite Priyanka to present first.
Thank you, Brittany. We all know that the world is confronted with one of its greatest challenges today, climate change, and its impacts are being felt worldwide, but often more acutely in the less developed and poorer nations. We have seen how flooding, heat waves, wildfires, and such extremes affect humans as well as heritage structures severely. It was in 2008 that India's government released the country's National Action Plan on Climate Change with 8 national missions. These missions support several projects, but the role of culture and heritage is not apparent or asserted in any way, even though it is critical to all the themes. Several states in India have started to form their own state action plans for climate change and share them on their websites for public consultation. In December 2020, I was able to review and share my views on the Goa state sectoral strategies. And today we see a lot of conflict in Goa due to new infrastructures being introduced in places of natural ecosystems, such as wetlands and mangroves, and the lack of protection of traditional lands where estuarine agricultural system like Khazan farming took place. At the same time, the artistic expression of the youth and persistent citizen activism is very strong in Goa, and it is making a big difference, which is very inspiring. I live in Mumbai, which is a peninsular city facing complex challenges, including flooding, unplanned informal settlements, air pollution, waste management, rapid migrant influx, etc. It is said to have a threat of total submergence by 2050. Mumbai has several layers of history, and fronting direct danger are its many native coastal settlements. While researching for my paper, Planning for Climate Change in Indigenous Coastal Settlements, I read through the Maharashtra State Adaptation Action Plan on Climate Change, which was formulated in 2014. The plan prepared was inadequate as it did not include historic built environment or strategies for its climate resilience. I also realized that these coastal areas need accurate mapping, listing for legal notification, and special development control regulations. In August 2021, the Mumbai Climate Action Plan was initiated by the municipal corporation, and it held many stakeholder consultations to seek suggestions and inputs from experts and citizens. It was very popular and many voices were heard. The Indian Prime Minister had said climate change must be fought not in silos, but in an integrated, comprehensive and holistic way. I believe that climate change policy must place environment at its heart and engage with people in a much more direct, deeper and meaningful way. Different contexts must be evaluated differently with sensitivity, and this should reflect in the area-wise planning policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Our next presenter will be Kai, and again the question is, what are the possible methods to integrate heritage, cultural landscapes and traditional knowledge into future climate change policy?
Yeah, so climate change has really impacted the Himalayas, you know, and there've been research done already several decades ago. And I think it was about some 15 years ago. I'm not quite sure of the exact year, but there was this campaign to get the Sagarmatha National Park, a World Heritage Site, on the danger list. So that Sagarmatha National Park is the Everest area of Mount Everest. And they wanted to get it on the danger list to actually point out the impact of climate change at that time. It never got on the danger list, and the question was, would it have ever gotten off the danger list if that would have been the criteria for putting it on the danger list? However, the whole discussion of the impact of climate, not only in the oceans, but also you know, in the mountainous regions, we had an ICOMOS discussion on that as well last year. It has really been something that Nepal has been sort of grappling with. Now, in connection with climate change, we have to look at it in respect to it magnifying the various impacts of hazards. For example, you know, we have more rainfall, the storms are stronger, the winds are stronger, climate, you know, is changing when, you know, like the rainy season started coming earlier. And so the impact on the environment, but also on our heritage has changed because of climate change. Now, the thing is, how do we respond to that? And this becomes important because, especially in connection, not only with, but generally with our habitat and our surroundings, we need to monitor it more closely, and we need to look at maintenance. We need to look at addressing these factors of magnified hazards, and we need to look at it in the long term. So I think there's a tendency of us looking at things short term, immediate impacts, but the solution for this would be really starting to think long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai.
Bien, ahora invito a la doctora Nelly Robles a responder la pregunta 3, que es ¿cuáles son los posibles métodos para integrar el patrimonio, los paisajes culturales y los conocimientos tradicionales en la futura política de cambio climático? Adelante, doctora.
Sí, muchas gracias. Pues la recuperación de componentes y conocimientos tradicionales de los paisajes, la flora y la fauna mediante investigaciones científicas, de aquellas evidencias materiales que se han perdido y de los que prevalecen, aunque degradados, deben ser claves para el mejoramiento de la relación hombre-naturaleza. Las comunidades mesoamericanas son poseedoras de profundos conocimientos sobre materiales, plantas comestibles y medicinales, animales y otros seres ligados a los ciclos solares y lunares. Asimismo, de los tiempos en que los humanos deben respetar de la naturaleza. La carrera por la producción desenfrenada para un sistema de mercados sin límites, el uso del plástico, los combustibles fósiles y en general los componentes de la vida urbana moderna han derivado en el gran desastre para nuestro planeta. Sin embargo, las comunidades tradicionales son poseedoras de valiosos patrimonios en sus conocimientos. Allí hay respuestas que deben recuperarse para reequilibrar nuestra relación con la Tierra. La reducción del impacto del cambio climático debería basarse en la moderación de los antagonismos entre la vida rural y la urbana, que conlleva, por un lado, la reducción de la marginación de los pobres y, por otro lado, la concientización entre los habitantes urbanos a los métodos de autoconsumo de alimentos, ahorro de agua y energías y de la aplicación de los conocimientos modernos para el mejoramiento de las vidas de todos. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctora. Ahora le cedo la palabra a la maestra Olga Uribe para responder la pregunta.
Muchas gracias. Las comunidades chinamperas han demostrado poseer una enorme resiliencia, con una gran capacidad de adaptación frente a cambios como la urbanización, convirtiéndose no solo en zona productiva, sino también de interés turístico desde el punto de vista natural y cultural. Se debe incluir la gestión de ecosistemas en los que el uso del agua, la salud del suelo y otros factores medioambientales están estrechamente vinculados, a menudo en formas que requieren reglas de gobernanza social específicas en lo que se refiere a la tenencia, la asignación de recursos y la mano de obra. Es necesario llamar la atención sobre las formas únicas e ingeniosas en que se ha alcanzado la sostenibilidad en la actividad humana más básica, convirtiendo los recursos naturales en sistemas alimentarios viables. Por ello, se debe fomentar su conservación dinámica y apoyar a los pequeños campesinos, quienes son los actores más relevantes para la conservación del sistema y actúan como custodios de este legado, para que preserven viva su herencia frente a nuevos desafíos como la urbanización y el cambio climático. El haber designado el sistema chinampero como Patrimonio Agrícola Mundial puede ayudar a conservar la biodiversidad y salvaguardar variedades de cultivos en peligro, lo que beneficia a la seguridad alimentaria a nivel mundial y permite revitalizar las culturas locales, crear empleo y promover el turismo. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, maestra.
And finally, I'd like to ask Dr. Ekan to answer what other possible methods to integrate heritage, cultural landscapes, and traditional knowledge into future climate change policy.
Yes, actually, I also see a number of questions. I don't know when I have to answer these questions, but I will first answer yours.
We'll do those ones at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So actually our question, at least in the Mediterranean realm here in Izmir, is sustaining the sustainable ecosystems, because when we look at the ancient production landscapes here in our province, we see that they are already adapted to climate crisis. They are already biodiversity friendly. They are already a very good source of economy and social life. So what we have done is basically we eliminated this existing sustainable way of production, a sustainable way of living, and we have replaced it with something which is entirely unsustainable. But we are lucky that we still have this very old practices available, which we can use as a laboratory to understand how we can live in harmony with nature and how we can live in harmony with the past, which again takes us into this circular culture debate, which I have mentioned. So what we do is we are first of all trying to well understand how these ecosystems function, how they are sustainable, and we are trying to find the linkages between the physical heritage and the intangible heritage, which makes this landscape sustainable. Because usually when we talk about heritage issue, we talk about buildings, we talk about streets, so we talk about unliving spaces. But actually what we have to do is to combine this intangible heritage to make it as an answer to climate crisis. So I think naturally heritage, which encompasses intangible heritage, when I mean heritage, I include tangible and intangible as a one, are already sustainable, and they are excellent ways of solutions to deal with the climate crisis issue. What we have to do is, first of all, to see this, to understand this, and try to find our methods to implement this in this changing era of the world. Again, hopefully we'll have a couple of other possibilities to talk more about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ekan. Our next question is, what programs or systems does your area have or need to support traditional works during the pandemic and in the changing climate? I would ask that Kai present on this first.
So yeah, I think, again, pandemic and the changing climate are two very different impacts, and they need to be addressed in different manners. Also because the pandemic really impacted the intangible. People had to stay away, at a distance. We had, it was more the intangible heritage and activities that was impacted, while with climate change, it impacts more on the physical heritage. In many cases, it's a sort of a slow impact, which we somehow need to understand and address. In respect to the pandemic, I believe that, again, it's the local communities and their activities. It's sort of the local skills and the local resources that that need to be mobilized to counter the impact of the pandemic. So it's actually the resilience of the communities that we need to really support. And we saw that even during the pandemic, a lot of rituals, community activities continued, even though they had to adapt in many ways. So you had less people coming together, or they used to do it, in a different way, adapting to the circumstances. But we saw that the resilience was there, and there was even more interest to ensure that the intangible heritage is safeguarded. On the other hand, with climate change, again, it's the impact on the tangible. We need to look at it over a longer period of time, which we've been looking at some of the communities living up in the Himalayan region, where it has impacted, their farming, also especially the communities that do animal husbandry, or like with the yaks, they take the yaks up into the pasture areas and then come down. But these seasons have changed, so their whole seasonal sort of movement has changed due to climate change. On the other hand, in connection with the buildings, traditional buildings are adapted to climate, and with basic resources, they have adjusted to the climate. When that changes, the buildings themselves have to change. For example, flat earthen roofs, if there's more rain, they needed to adapt to these changing circumstances, requiring more maintenance and sort of adaptation. So it's again the resilience of the local community that we really are dependent on. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai.
Bien, ahora quiero invitar a la doctora Nelly Robles a responder la pregunta número 4, que es ¿qué programas o sistemas tiene o necesita su área para apoyar las obras tradicionales durante la pandemia y en un clima cambiante?
Sí, muchas gracias. Pues pienso que debería continuarse con obras de infraestructura a base de arquitecturas tradicionales. Por ejemplo, las infraestructuras que se hacen para el turismo de manera respetuosa en algunas áreas de bosques, como los pueblos mancomunados de Oaxaca. La utilización de materiales tradicionales, como la tierra, las fibras, la cal y las piedras locales, vienen sustituyendo poco a poco el uso indiscriminado del cemento. Sobre todo, se necesitan programas gubernamentales que revaloren los sistemas tradicionales de construcción, también los de alimentación, de medicina, de artes y artesanías, que permitan a las comunidades ejercer su derecho a la creación de respuestas y adaptación a los cambios. Se necesita que los gobiernos confíen en los saberes tradicionales y los adopten en las políticas generales. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctora. Bueno, a continuación invito a la maestra Olga Uribe a responder también la pregunta.
Con gusto. A principios del siglo XX se decidió conducir el agua de los manantiales de Xochimilco y Tláhuac hacia las nuevas colonias que se estaban construyendo en la Ciudad de México. Además, la urbanización de las laderas de los cerros que circundan la zona lacustre permite una menor infiltración de agua al subsuelo. Otro problema muy serio, agravado con los sismos, son los hundimientos diferenciales de la zona chinampera y ejidal. Estos factores, entre otros, han agravado la problemática referente a la falta de agua, principalmente en la zona chinampera, que desde hace 5 décadas se abastece de aguas tratadas provenientes de la planta de tratamiento del Cerro de la Estrella. De igual manera, a causa de los hundimientos diferenciales, otras áreas se inundan y se vuelven improductivas. En ese sentido, es urgente la necesidad de diseñar e implementar planes y programas interinstitucionales, gobierno, sociedad civil y academia, además de gestionar los recursos económicos y humanos para su instrumentación. Estos pueden ser la restauración de canales y apantles para recuperar y mejorar la navegación y restablecer la conectividad acuática, implementación de métodos tradicionales como las costaleras para retener el agua, rehabilitación e integración de plantas de tratamiento, incluyendo la del Cerro de la Estrella, y la integración de sistemas de tratamiento de aguas residuales para mitigar el impacto de los asentamientos irregulares en las chinampas y en las zonas cerriles. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, maestra.
Thank you, Olga. I would ask that Dr. Ekan present next on what programs or systems does your area have or need to support traditional works during the pandemic and in the changing climate.
Yes, I would like to give a couple of more information about how our support system functions. First of all, we have accomplished a traditional an inventory of producers, farmers, villages, micro basins, where traditional systems, traditional production, and heritage, intangible heritage is still continuing. So for those regions, we have identified incentives based on their prime products. In some areas, this is meat. In some areas, these are cereals. And in some areas, this is milk. We give them higher prices than the average price in the market. So this is direct incentive, but also we give them social incentives. We give them, for instance, free consultancy services to sell their products directly to the markets. So on one hand, our municipality is buying their products at good prices, but on the other, not to make them entirely dependent on the government in the municipality, we also give them consultancy services about how to market their products, how to package their products, to have a nice design for their local products. We are making Wi-Fi available for the remotest communities, because in the end of the day, their children go to school, and during the pandemic, schools were closed, and those remote villages could not join the virtual education program. So we have taken Wi-Fi infrastructure to those villages, and we gave all kind of other capacity development support, or many other infrastructure support. But as I said, I mean, this is a bilateral relation with those communities, with the traditional communities. We are not only giving them something, but we also take from them their knowledge, their experience, and their understanding of sustainable living.
Thank you, Guven. And finally, Priyanka, I would ask, what programs or systems does your area have or need to support traditional works during the pandemic and in the changing climate.
Thank you. Thank you, Brittany. It is important for people to understand the value of traditional works and be inspired by them so as to create programs and systems to support them. I totally agree with Kai when he said the pandemic impacted the intangible and that the resilience of the local community is what we are dependent on. In Mumbai, traditional fishing villages are being encroached upon, and artisanal fishing is not suitably realized as an intangible cultural heritage and living heritage within the city. But during the pandemic in 2020, the Living Waters Museum, through its exhibition Confluence Water Stories of Mumbai, brought together artists, architects, designers, photographers, social scientists, and urban planners to document Mumbai's relationship with water through storytelling and digital technology. This generated a lot of awareness about the significance of coastal settlements and the impact of climate change on these. Recently, marine walks are also being organized in coastal areas in Mumbai. Offering people to see and take part in conservation efforts will help them to support the traditional works. Many traditional workers do not have the safety of regular salaries and social security. But there are platforms and related schemes that help in vocational training and employment, but these must be promoted effectively to reach the needy. Like Dr. Ekan also said, there are many institutions, philanthropic in India, like Tata Trust, which support conservation, performing arts, and arts education. During COVID, they created several learning centers and supported them with technology, books, innovative activities, and learning aids. In my city, government and the NGOs are taking efforts to involve the youth through activity-based workshops and climate fellowships. So I think there are several programs and systems, but the most important thing is to understand the value that the traditional works bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Then our final question tonight of our set 3 questions is, how can we use heritage to create a more sustainable economic paradigm? We are running a little over, so I'll ask you each to be brief. Dr. Nele, if you would go first, please.
Muchas gracias. Pienso que el patrimonio se degrada en la medida en que sus poseedores no se identifican con sus preceptos o no encuentran una liga directa entre el pasado y el presente, es decir, entre la herencia y la vida moderna. En la medida en que el trabajo científico permita a las comunidades reflejarse directamente en su patrimonio y se pase de la práctica común en que el patrimonio es algo para vender al turismo o a las clases altas o al discurso político, etc., hacia la conciencia de que el patrimonio es algo para vivir en él y disfrutarlo de manera individual y colectiva, será como se puedan plantear los usos del patrimonio en beneficio del mejoramiento de la calidad de vida. Pienso que la revaloración del trabajo artesanal mediante la integración de grupos de base organizados en torno a actividades productivas basadas en materias primas renovables y conocimientos tradicionales sería un principio para un nuevo y más aceptable paradigma económico en pos del patrimonio. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctora. A continuación invito a la maestra Olga Uribe a responder la pregunta, que es la quinta y última de esta sesión. Y la pregunta es, ¿cómo podemos utilizar el patrimonio para crear un paradigma económico más sostenible? Adelante, maestra.
Muchas gracias, Yola. Pues realmente creo que lo que dijo la doctora Nelly es precisamente lo que está sucediendo con el puente de Urrutia, con la comunidad. Acaban de tener una asamblea de socios, de ejidatarios y de chinamperos y siguen muy emocionados con promover este proyecto porque lo sienten muy suyo, porque ellos lo construyeron y porque ellos lo pidieron. si hablamos de tres componentes generales de este proyecto, el económico productivo, creando un centro de distribución y comercialización de la producción local, hortalizas, flores de ornato, dulces cristalizados, artesanías a base de tule y lirio, la reactivación de la economía local y del desarrollo comunitario y el promotor de vínculos interinstitucionales e interdisciplinares. Como componente segundo o B, sociocultural, la revalorización cultural y reconstrucción del tejido social que es tan importante en la zona, la construcción de identidad y memoria colectiva, el escenario y símbolo de la defensa agraria. Y como componente último, el medioambiental, el aprovechamiento responsable de los recursos naturales, la reintegración del agroecosistema de la subcuenca Xochimilco-Chalco y la integración de tecnologías y técnicas compatibles con el medio ambiente. Todo ello haciendo el proyecto, creando el mercado para los productos agrícolas, creando una zona de comercialización y distribución de esa producción. En una segunda etapa, el vivero y jardín botánico y una casa ejidal, salón, una torre de avistamiento, un museo de sitio y el centro cultural comunitario. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, maestra.
Next, I would ask that Dr. Eken answer how can we use heritage to create a more sustainable economic paradigm?
Basically, I think without taking into account culture and heritage, I don't think no one can develop economic paradigm. So we really should take it not just as an added value, heritage as an added value to economy, but as a prerequisite of an economic paradigm. Because if we lose the connection between now and the past, the harmony between now and the past, we can not develop a sustainable economy and a new economic paradigm. So therefore, we think tangible and intangible heritage is not only an added value, but is a key instrument to have a sustainable economy. When I mean heritage, I also mean the ecological and natural heritage of a city like Izmir, and the connection between ecology and economy are not just vocabulary similarities. Every economic source relies on ecological sources, ecological balance which surrounds our cities. Therefore, the economic models in Izmir we are trying to develop, take industry, take tourism, take other businesses, agriculture, is closely linked with the heritage, with the cultural heritage itself. This is to make more competitive, because these concepts are quite new in the world for our businesses, but B, to make everything what we do more sustainable for the future. So this is the short summary of what I wanted to really say on this subject. Culture, heritage is not just an added value, but a prerequisite for a strong and sustainable economy.
Thank you, Dr. Eken. Next, I would ask Priyanka to answer how can we use heritage to create a more sustainable economic paradigm?
Thank you, Brittany. Thinking about heritage, it can be looked in very many ways to make it economically viable and sustainable. Heritage assets can be made environmentally sustainable through active methods and can serve as examples for tourists and larger society to learn from. Natural assets could be protected through awareness and ecotourism, and intangible traditional knowledges should be treated as intellectual properties and could be monetized. Looking at the case of Mumbai, it established itself as the first city in India to adopt heritage regulations for the protection of its urban heritage in 1995. But it continues to suffer due to lethargy in maintenance and some restrictive policies. For the general population who is not aware and conscious for heritage or environment, making heritage economically sustainable is a very big challenge. Hence, data on best practices and readily available techniques must become accessible and shared widely. Experts who are able to provide help for heritage conservation, adaptive reuse, creative programs, and other inventive solutions should be enlisted and brought together at local levels and supported by governments. There exist some organizations abroad that focus on circular economy and use the material from demolished historic buildings to conserve other heritage buildings, which is very inspiring according to me. To sum up, when we talk about sustainability, the 17 SD Sustainable Development Goals immediately come to my mind. In November 2021, I researched on the SDGs and wrote a paper on sustainable development of industrial rail landscapes, where I linked each SDG to an aspect that affected the hill station of Mathiran Eco-Sensitive Zone and the Mathiran Light Railway. I believe that the idea of keeping the environment at heart and leaving no one behind will help heritage become economically sustainable. And for this, responsible governance is most crucial, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Next, I would ask Kai to answer the question of how can we use heritage just to create a more sustainable economic paradigm?
Thank you. Yes, I think we learned a wonderful lesson from the pandemic. The lesson we learned was wonderful. The pandemic itself was, of course, quite a disaster. But I think it taught us to slow down and to look around, to sort of be aware of what's going around, listen to the birds singing. And I think just becoming more mindful of what is going on around us. And in a certain sense, because of the lack of sort of mobility, we started looking at things more locally. And I think that becomes really sort of the basis to try to develop something new, a new approach. You know, sort of getting away from that development for development's sake, which seems to be sort of an argument in many cases of expansion and always getting more. And I think even with tourism, we saw that, you know, instead of quantity, we're trying to look at quality. We're trying to, you know, do smaller things, but better. And I think we really need to look at that in respect to also its impact on the environment, on heritage, on, you know, our surroundings, and also in connection with the heritage and especially in Kathmandu, our post-earthquake sort of rehabilitation. We saw that all the sort of the foreign projects came to a standstill while the local ones continued. You know, it didn't really impact how the local community continued working. And I think we need to try to understand even, let's say, the local artisans and, you know, the building craftspeople, those who actually are in the culture sector, they need to be supported. We need a sort of a supported system, which very often our sort of the modern approach sort of has sidelined them. And I think we really need to start thinking about how to get them back into our system and sort of mainstreaming the community. Yes, so thank you.
Thank you, Kai. So we're going to move on from our set questions now and discuss, we've got several questions coming through from our audience for our speakers. I would like to present first to Dr. Ekan. We've had several questions, so I'm going to mix them up. One just was a straightforward, is the Izmir city development available in English? And then what are the improvements and how are they being monitored through key indicators with the Circular Culture Declaration?
Yes, what I have explained to you about the circular culture, circular economy, and circular city concept is tagged as Chittaslow Metropolis for Izmir. Izmir has a number of Chittaslow cities as districts, of which our mayor, Tunçsoyer, has been the founder, the pioneering mayor in Turkey in this concept. And the first Chittaslow metropolis in the world, one of the first, will be again the whole province, city of Izmir. And the plan for that is currently being prepared, and that will be available very soon in all kind of languages, including English. So that's for you to know. And how we have linked this circular culture concept with actual life is, it's like circles within each other. The outer circle is the circular culture. And then the circular economy comes. So those are the intangible values, assets, and issues which we have to take into account. And in the middle, then finally, the city itself, the physical environment of the city comes, which we describe as a circular city. It's actually very similar to the Urrutia project, which Miss Olga, it has also three components: the social component, the economical component, and the environmental component. It's very simple, just the order is a little bit different for us. And we are making this design in a way that every physical activity which will be taking place from now on is a part of the circular culture thinking and a part of the circular economy. There has been very wide questions, and your summary was also a little bit wide, so I tried to summarize. I'm unsure if I have answered everything, but hopefully, you know, I could give you some ideas.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Eken. Our next question is for Priyanka. How are younger generations engaging in traditional knowledge systems as a way of combating climate change?
Thank you, Brittany. Well, I think younger generations are very much connected with traditional knowledge systems through storytelling in India, also through religious teachings, you know. And now that everyone has a phone, they are connected and reading up upon climate. Fridays for Future that Greta Thunberg started is very popular in India as well. And the younger generation is connecting with traditional knowledge as well. We can see that when they're making art in Goa, there are artistic expressions to convey meanings about climate change, and they're participating in workshops. I myself participated in a workshop for climate policy to understand the meanings, and younger generation is doing a lot of podcasts, doing a lot of videos. So I think there's a lot going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka.
Bien, la siguiente pregunta va a ser para la doctora Nelly. En realidad son 3 preguntas, pero creo que se vinculan, así que podría ser una sola respuesta. La pregunta es, ¿cómo vincularía el desarrollo comunitario a la protección de las zonas arqueológicas para que sean sustentables? ¿Y qué medidas está tomando la autoridad para que esas zonas arqueológicas justamente sean sustentables? ¿Y cuáles serían las maneras en que se puede crear más confianza en los sistemas tradicionales? Por favor, doctora.
Sí, muchas gracias. Pues el vínculo para el desarrollo de una expresión más sustentable de las zonas arqueológicas parte de reconocer que las comunidades que poseen las tierras, los territorios arqueológicos en México deben tener un lugar preponderante en las decisiones de la vida de esos sitios. Al momento lo que tenemos es una ley federal de monumentos que en muchos sentidos excluye la participación de esas comunidades. Y los esfuerzos que se han estado haciendo por algunos sitios, sobre todo aquellos que son ahora de patrimonio mundial, es tratar de abrir canales de interacción con las comunidades sin todavía lograr hacer un manejo conjunto o una interacción aceptable. En este sentido, la sustentabilidad, el futuro de estos sitios, pues depende de una mejor relación entre el gobierno federal, que por ley maneja y define los destinos de los sitios, con esas comunidades que son los poseedores de las tierras donde se desarrollan esos sitios ancestrales. Por otro lado, se ha llegado a situaciones de conflicto bastante indeseables en cuanto a la falta de sensibilidad por algunos manejadores de estos sitios, y la historia reciente nos ha mostrado que ese camino no nos lleva a ninguna parte. Cuando nosotros como académicos, como políticos, como directores de sitios, hemos dado un paso atrás y hemos adoptado cierta humildad para reconocer el valor de los conocimientos ancestrales, hemos podido tener una mejor respuesta y hemos podido darle a los sitios, como el ejemplo que yo comentaba hace rato, proveer a los sitios de cierta infraestructura hecha a base de conocimientos ancestrales, de arquitecturas, de otro tipo de infraestructuras, los caminos, por ejemplo, y de esta manera las comunidades sienten una mayor presencia, tienen una mayor presencia. Los empleos que se generan de las zonas arqueológicas evidentemente tienen que ser destinados a las comunidades que están involucradas directamente en su territorio y que deberían estar involucradas en su manejo. Por lo tanto, para alguna comunidad o comunidades en México, tener una zona arqueológica en su territorio no debería configurar un problema como lo ven muchos hasta ahora, sino debería ser una especie de ganancia, una especie de condición favorable para poder desarrollar sus saberes tradicionales y también de mejorar la economía local mediante el reparto de las ganancias que se generan por el turismo, sobre todo de los sitios de patrimonio mundial. Muchas gracias.
A usted, doctora, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Doctor. Our next question is for Kai, and it's, are heritage sites getting more prepared with the drastic changes because of climate change in Nepal? And how have the management strategies begun to evolve?
Kai, I think you're muted.
There. Okay, sorry. So any kind of disaster tests communities. And in respect to the earthquake that we had in 2015, it was clearly tested our tangible heritage. And the pandemic has tested sort of the intangible aspects of heritage within the community. And I believe that each time it gets tested, if we survive, we come out stronger. And in this case, I do believe we had a lot of things that we learned through both these disasters. And so for one, we have been revising the management plan for the Kathmandu Valley World Heritage Site. And one of the interesting outcomes has been that we've looked at procedures for the protection of heritage of different categories. So one is at the site landscape level, one is at the built heritage level, the other is cultural objects, and then the intangible. And as has been mentioned by others, I mean, this link between the intangible and the tangible becomes very critical. And I think that really has been something that we learned through these disasters. And one of the other aspects with this link is that the community has to be resilient for the tangible aspects also to survive and to be rebuilt or to be maintained. And we're working on especially to provide support to the craftspeople who are really critical to maintain our built heritage, for example. This really has been one of the outcomes of the more recent disasters, both the earthquake and then followed by the pandemic, that we've realized how important it is that we support the community. It cannot be just an abstract management system where we have policies and bylaws and guidelines. It has to be really something where the community gets involved, and it is through their knowledge and their skills and involvement that we are able to ensure the continuity of the heritage. And we've tried to link these to what we are developing as continuity plans. We're still working on that, but that really has been the outcome. And I do believe that we have become more resilient after the disasters. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai.
We have a last question for Olga, which actually, do you think, I am asking because I see the screen, but it's like closing screen. I don't know if
sorry.
I can pass the question to Olga. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Brittany. Bien, maestra Olga, son en realidad 3 preguntas, 2 de ellas se relacionan mucho, que tiene que ver con cómo hacer sostenibles las comunidades. Preguntan si considera que el potencial de las chinampas está siendo desaprovechado como una forma de hacer sostenibles a las comunidades, y qué tipos de prácticas de cultura tradicional deberían ser apoyadas en aras de proteger el patrimonio cultural de la zona de Xochimilco. Y en ese, bueno, también hablando obviamente de las chinampas, ¿cuál ha sido la razón de que no haya sido posible implementar un plan de conservación de las chinampas?
Con mucho gusto, Yola. Bueno, vamos a empezar por esta idea de cómo conservar la tradición del cultivo prehispánico, que fue el cultivo chinampero. Es una realidad que a principios del siglo XX hubo un gran éxito en los cultivos chinamperos, pero a medida de que se les fue quitando el agua por estos acueductos que fueron realizados para traer agua a la Ciudad de México, empezaron a rellenar los canales y los zapantles, y empezaron a tener otro tipo de cultivos que no eran precisamente con la tradición que se tenía de las chinampas. Sin embargo, muchos de los antiguos campesinos, de las personas más viejas, durante mucho tiempo estuvieron diciéndole a sus hijos: no se queden aquí, no vale la pena mantener este trabajo, es de pobres, váyanse y estudien otra cosa y ya no regresen. Y sin embargo, a finales del siglo XX y a principios de este siglo han empezado a regresar. Es decir, sí hay ya profesionistas, campesinos, que han regresado a seguir manteniendo esta tradición del cultivo de la manera como se hace desde hace muchos siglos. Pero tienen todos los problemas que hemos estado platicando. Con los sismos Este último, por ejemplo, del 2017, en el que se abrieron grietas en el subsuelo de los canales, se empezó a perder todavía más el agua de lo que se tenía. Ha habido estos hundimientos diferenciales que hace que unas chinampas se inunden y otras se queden sin agua o el nivel del agua quede muy bajo. Y entonces es una lucha constante de los campesinos y ejidatarios para mantener sus tradiciones, pero lo siguen haciendo. La economía en época prehispánica y hasta el siglo XIX era circular, como se ha hablado aquí, es decir, se mantenía había la posibilidad de obtener sus cultivos y autoproducir, pero además poder tener cultivos en exceso para poderlos vender. Ahora la central de abastos hace que sea muy complicado entrar ahí o vender los productos directamente y se reducen los precios de los cultivos. Por eso es necesario empezar a pensar con políticas públicas en la venta de estos directamente, de estos productos de hortalizas y de flores directamente desde las zonas de Xochimilco y Tláhuac. Y esa es la razón de estos proyectos que se están haciendo. Pero son realmente ellos, la comunidad, la que está clamando por esos apoyos gubernamentales que, como muy bien dice la doctora Nelly, no ha sido posible apoyarlos, hacer este plan de conservación que es necesario, no nada más porque UNESCO lo solicite porque forma parte de patrimonio cultural mundial, sino porque realmente es una manera de poderlos apoyar con el agua, con el manejo de los canales, con la comercialización de sus productos. Pero todo eso se ha reducido a nivel mínimo y es gracias a la comunidad que se sigue manteniendo ese impulso y esa resiliencia de la que tanto hemos hablado.
Muchas gracias, maestra, por su respuesta.
Thank you to all of our panelists today. It's been a really interesting discussion. We did have one final question that we have unfortunately run out of time to present. So we will just ask that if possible, the panelists provide a written insight and we'll add it to the Facebook comment later. That question was how to approach government so that they understand the current socio-environmental crisis requires urgent, resilient actions in the defense of the natural and built heritage. It would have been interesting to do, but we have run over time. I will ask Raul to join us now. He will be providing a summary of today's discussions in both English and Spanish.
Hello, everybody. We are facing a hopeful scenario where, at least in the discourse, there is intention on the part of the national and local authorities to address these issues. The case of management by the authorities of Xochimilco and Izmir, as well as the distribution of the public budgets in India, help us to think that we are making progress. However, it has not been enough, especially in the case of traditional workers, as has been heard in the case of Mexico, especially in Oaxaca. The arrival of COVID did not change this course. We don't really need a new paradigm, but to look at what we have learned from the past. Intangible heritage can teach us a lot about balancing the use of resources. Heritage helps to create a more sustainable economic paradigm. Traditional local projects are usually seen as very owned by communities, which generates greater commitment to them. We need to slow down, be aware of the impact on our surroundings, and we need to return to prioritizing. It is essential to always think about the environmental and not leaving anyone behind. We can synthesize what was discussed today in one sentence. Hold the heritage of the past for all the peoples of the present and to build a sustainable future on a planet for all. En Spanish, estamos ante un escenario esperanzador donde al menos en el discurso existe la intención por parte de las autoridades nacionales y locales de abordar estos temas. Los casos de gestión de las autoridades de Xochimilco e Izmir, así como la distribución del presupuesto público en India, nos ayudan a pensar que estamos avanzando. Sin embargo, no ha sido suficiente, especialmente en el caso de los trabajadores tradicionales, como se ha escuchado en el caso de México, especialmente en Oaxaca. La llegada de COVID no cambió este rumbo. Realmente no necesitamos un nuevo paradigma, sino mirar lo que hemos aprendido del pasado. El patrimonio intangible puede enseñar mucho sobre el equilibrio en el uso de los recursos. El patrimonio ayuda a crear un paradigma económico más sostenible. Los proyectos locales tradicionales suelen ser vistos como muy propios por las comunidades, lo que genera un mayor compromiso con ellos. En ese sentido, necesitamos reducir la velocidad, ser conscientes del impacto en nuestro entorno y debemos volver a priorizar. Es fundamental pensar siempre en el medio ambiente y no dejar a nadie atrás. Podemos sintetizar lo discutido hoy en una frase: todo el patrimonio del pasado para todos los pueblos del presente y construir un futuro sustentable en un planeta para todos.
Gracias, Raul. Lydia, was there any final comments from Facebook to be shared here?
No, I think all of the questions were reserved to the chat and comments. So thank you.
Okay, just to let you know, there are several other questions that we just haven't had time to cover from the conversation today. If our panelists have time, we will get written responses onto the Facebook chat with those. I would like to thank all of our panelists for the help today. I would like to thank ICOMOS Mexico and the SDGs Working Group for putting this event together. And thank you to all the panelists for thank you to the audience for joining us this evening or this morning, whatever time it is for you, and for the interesting and engaging discussion that we've had from it.